What was your high school's wildest not safe for work scandal? Our science teacher was an adult movie star in a past life. Someone in the school found a video she was in his dad's adult movie stash. It was a huge scandal in our conservative town. She was let go, which sucked because she was really an excellent teacher. It became a national news story. She was on Dr. Phil about it. Despite numerous campaigns by the students, she was never hired back. An English teacher would make out with a student during his planning period while his wife was teaching classes next door. After school, he would make excuses to his wife about having to stay late at school and meet the student at hotel rooms. He was led out of the school in handcuffs in front of the entire school. Funny enough, the cops gave him the opportunity to go out the back door of the school and not make a scene, but he refused. Dubbed the urinator, they kept finding urine puddles in the school hallways, stairwells, and the handicap elevator. The school had cameras everywhere, but they never saw someone just peeing in the hallway. No one knew how it kept happening without someone being caught. Turns out someone was peeing in a Gatorade bottle, and in between classes when halls were full, they would just randomly spill it somewhere, and no one around them noticed. The method only got found out when the bottle with some leftovers was found in a trash. But they still never found who actually was doing it. One of the girls were sleeping with the admin. She was 16-17 when that started. Heard an update from an old classmate nearly 20 years later, and not only have they stayed together, they're married, got 3 kids, and live the upper middle class suburban dream life. The soccer coach was sleeping with 4 of the soccer players, 16-18 years old, 2 of them being other teachers' daughters. They had it completely secret until his wife found a journal where wrote about each time he slept with each girl on the team. At the end of the school day, we walked out and there was 4 or 5 cop cars, and they were walking him out of his building in cuffs. If I remember correctly, the girls didn't have to come back to school for the rest of the school year. It was close to the end anyway. Everyone found out their names pretty quickly. Biggest scandal at that school in decades. A kid apparently jacked off in the back of the class. Someone apparently got it on their phone. Cops came, person who recorded it got charged. He sat where I did, but in a different class period. So I switched my chair for a new, less nutty chair. Turns out every other class before me had also switched the chair, so we couldn't find the nut chair. We even made black lights with our phones to look for the chair. It was great. My first day of 9th grade, a senior took a hit of acid, took his clothes off, ran around naked yelling, "I want to see everyone. I want to see everyone." He was finally chilled out and they got a robe on him, called his folks. Maybe he was suspended, same him a few weeks later. 3 years after that, he came to our house to install cable TV. My dad always kept some cheap beer around for service people, and I gave him and his coworker and said, "We didn't have any LSD?" He laughed his ass off and said, "That's probably a good thing." Leaked video of the business teacher licking her own nipple, trying to be seductive. This was sent to several senior boys. It was rumored she was involved with a few of them as well. She was escorted out of school during one of her classes. Despite all the charges, she never really served time. I'm late to this, but a kid in my high school's family was legit keeping slaves in his basement. One of them escaped and ran to a Dunkin' Donuts, and they were freed and parents charged. The slaves were chained in the basement and covered in cigarette burns. The kid never showed up to school again. The whole school was divided between hating him and feeling bad for him. Some thought he should have reported his family. Others thought he was likely a victim of abuse himself. Crazy shit. A girl got gangbanged on an office chair and everyone spun it around for a turn. My cousin's PE teacher turned out to be a pedophile a few weeks ago. My cousin and his classmates might actually testify in court. He got caught like 2 weeks after my cousin's graduation. A girl blew 2 guys, back to back, on the bus home from school one day. Pretty sure all 3 got expelled, but it's foggy now. I was on a different bus, but heard about it for weeks after and never saw any of those kids ever again. This was in 6th or 7th grade, by the way. One of our high school guidance counselors was a creepy dude. He was in a sleazy motel, tied up, with a gash on his head, car stolen from the parking lot of the motel. It turns out that he had 2 HS girls meet up with him at the motel. Not the first time they finally had enough of his stuff, tried to kill him, tied him up, and stole his car. What is the most not safe for work thing you've seen at a party? Friend hired a prostitute for his B-day party, and she proceeded to bang any guy who wanted it. None of them even knew. They all thought she was some chick who was visiting from Georgia. They still tell the story like she wasn't a prostitute. Dude and lesbian fucking on the kitchen floor. Dude came and lesbian immediately started punching him in the face. Weirdest thing I've ever seen. I just wanted a beer. Saw a girl getting banged by her boyfriend from the back while she was blowing guys. There was a line to who was getting sucked off next. I was at this one party where a drunk guy got in a fight with one of those easy up tent tarp thingies. He beat the crap out of it for about 20 minutes, then kind of collapsed on top. Next thing I know, his pants are unzipped and I think he may have been jerking off onto it. Or maybe he was banging it. I didn't bother to go check. Maybe a little late, but a guy I used to know had an obsession with his testicles. He was always stealing people's phones at parties and taking pics of his sack to put as their screensaver. Also, God forbid anyone pass out or fall asleep because they will end up with this guy's balls on their face. Nude twin sisters licking whipped cream off each other's nipples. College party. The house was telling people that they were girls gone wild. This girl was at a party I was at. I had filled my Svedka bottle with water. She took it and chugged. She pretended to get drunk and proceeded to shove a remote up her vagina in front of everyone. She'd only drank out of that bottle. I was at a former friend's house at a party when I was about 14. A guy fell asleep and people started stuffing his ass full of food and baby wipes, and some dude was farting on that guy's face too. That was the time I figured out that falling asleep at parties is not something you want. Went to a friend's house in college for a party, went to go to the bathroom, and I walked in on an 18-year-old high school girl getting railed up the ass, but his next-door neighbor, who was in his 40s. I was in college. It started out as a relatively low-key party with sci-fi club members. A guy and a girl who weren't actually dating at that point went upstairs so she could try blowing him with pop rocks in her mouth, and one or two others went up to watch. All I really saw firsthand was her head bobbing through the doorway. My girlfriend and I left at that point, but I'm 80 certain it turned into a sloppy nerd orgy. People began using the carpeted floor in the basement. By the end of the night, there was piss and puke all over the floor. I haven't been back to that house, but I can only imagine the stain. A guy was passed out on a sofa. A girl proceeded to blow 8 different guys and spit every load into his mouth. Some kid basically had a blowjob party where all the dudes sat in a circle, whipped their dicks out, and the chicks all rotated around blowing the dudes. This was way back in high school. Went to a party to see my crush. When I got there, I saw her making out with this really ugly guy, so I got bummed out and wanted to be alone. I got upstairs, found an empty room, and turned on the TV. Archie's P sort of T4 was on. I thought, his night might not suck after all, so I'm marveling at Luke coming out of Jedi closet. When suddenly the door slams open, my crush and the ugly guy, still having their tongues wrapped around each other like Medusa's hair early in the morning, fall beside me on the couch and start banging like they only live once. But they don't seem to mind that to me, so I decide to ignore them. Nobody will stand between me and watching Star Wars, damn it. And so I did. There was a party at my friend's house. I noticed there were more people than usual. Older people too, around mid-20s. I was 16. I didn't make much of it because I thought they were his brother's friends. A few hours went by. I was drunk. Stumbled upstairs to find the strangers having an awfully sweaty and awkward orgy. Turns out, his brother didn't know them. No one did. Jesus, where do I start? One time a bunch of friends and I dropped acid and wore togas and a girl took turns blowing us. There's been orgies, a line of coke the full length of a dinner table where we were told do what you can, naked fire spinning, penis puppetry, and other kinky circus shenanigans. I once saw a guy fill up one of those big apple juice bottles with water and hook it up to a barbell he had pierced into his penis, and he lifted it up. It looked like the thing was 2 feet long, all stretched out. Didn't tear anything. A sex shadow show where people were behind a sheet fucking with a light illuminating them so we could watch their shadows fucking. That's a start. At a club in Mexico, and there was a guy with a camera live streaming everything onto a gigantic projector screen that everyone in the place could see. My friend and I watched as his then girlfriend appeared on screen blowing some guy. I thought it was pretty funny. My friend did not find it that funny. What's the most not safe for work thing you saw go down at work? I'm a teacher. Our smart boards are linked to our computers, but you can freeze what's on the board. so the students can do the work and you can check emails, do registers, etc. One guy thought he'd frozen the board and proceeded to sext his missus over email during a lesson. He was at least smart enough to use his personal email, but he was dumb enough to not check the board was actually frozen. Result was students photographing the rather scandalous emails and Snapchatting them to each other. I work on a different site, and within 2 hours it was all over my site as well. The guy no longer works for us. I worked janitorial at a university and was on the early morning shift. It was normally pretty quiet for 30 AM, with few people around. One morning I went to get onto an elevator and there were 2 people having vigorous sex. There was that awkward moment of us staring at each other as the door stayed open for a few seconds and then closed again. I had a good laugh, then went about my work thinking little of it. Fast forward 3 years. I meet this girl and start dating her. After a few months we end up going on a camping trip and we were going to meet a few of her friends out there. When we arrive at the campsite, there was a second awkward moment as I recognized the couple from the elevator and they recognized me. When my GF introduced us, the 3 of us almost simultaneously said, "We've met." When my GF asked when and how we met, we just burst out laughing and ended up telling the story. Small world. When I worked at a hotel, one of the housekeepers was known to hook up with guests from time to time. The head housekeeper caught her in the act once when she was trying to inspect rooms. Edit. I regret to inform the people who commented asking which hotel and all the people who DM'd me asking as well, but I don't think she still works there. Saw my boss and a coworker making out. They were both married at the time. Each came into my office later that day and had a sit down with me on why these types of things happen. I was 26 years old at the time. I was working second shift security in a pharma company and a line worker came put of the boss's office all disheveled. The boss had gone home already, so I kept watching and 2 dudes came out of the office a few minutes later. One was still putting his pants back on. They were extremely surprised that the door to her office was on camera. Turns out one of the dudes had stolen a master key from a janitor's cart and had been using the manager's office as a bang pad. Guy came into work very late back office for a bank with 2 black eyes and completely beaten up. In front of everyone and quite loudly said it was his girlfriend. But you think I'm bad? You should see her. He was being serious too. Someone also caught him doing a line in the office toilet before he started work that day too. I've worked at a country club for a long time and there is always scandalous shit going down. Housekeeper was banging the maintenance man in the laundry room. A member walked into the bathroom and witnessed a man giving another man a BJ. The beverage cart girl was flashing her new boob job to men for tips. The latest hot off the press story was 2 coworkers were having a threesome with a member and took pics on his phone. Wife found them, sent them to the GM. 2 coworkers fired on the spot. Plenty more stories, but those are the top ones. Woman pulled up behind our building. We had on-site security and lots of cameras. She stops, gets out, drops her pants and shits behind the building. Security goes out to ask her WTF she's doing. She scoops her mess up with napkins and drives away. Our office was near a mall and an interstate highway. There were restaurants and fast food everywhere. There was no reason for her to do that behind our building. I worked as a janitor at a hospital. There was a private restroom on the 2nd floor. On multiple days, someone positioned themselves above the toilet and took a dump all over it. It turned out to be a janitor on 2nd shift. Edit. I worked 3rd shift. I preferred this restroom except for the days when it was covered in poop. By the way, I only talked to that janitor one time. He said he had been there for 10 years and planned to retire from there. Had a fire drill at work one night. Attendance was taken and 2 people missing. Couple bosses went back and looking for them, found them in a storage room having sex. Boss told them to finish up, have a good time, go home, and don't bother coming back. First day at a job and out of nowhere an employee yells across the office at the boss, "We all know you're cheating on your wife." With the secretary, the boss freaked out and started yelling at all of us that his personal life is none of our business. The secretary was crying and they both left. I was supposed to be training with the boss that day, but because he was gone, we all just went down the street to some Mexican restaurant and drank all day. Pretty cool gig, even if it was very short-lived. Cinema usher, end of the night and waiting for final films to finish and clear up. One guy was sitting in the back row, would be standing at the front to the side watching the credits. It is not uncommon for this, but the end credits finish and he is still there. I begin to walk up the stairs towards him, and he hasn't noticed me, and I can make out he looks like he is asleep. As I get closer, he suddenly looks at me and mouths something. Another head pops up from his lap. Another guy had been going to downtown with. I instantly froze, turned around and walked back down to the exit. They rather sheepishly left a few minutes later. I thanked them for their visit and hoped they enjoyed the movie. Back in the 90s, I worked at a car wash. Across the alley from the car wash was a small condo with a balcony facing us. One day, a guy was totally banging his girlfriend from behind on the balcony facing us. They were clothed, but pants dropped, skirt high. We started to notice after a while, and as we pointed and showed more coworkers, their tempo increased and then they finished, and we cheered them on. What is the dumbest thing you did because you were horny? I was dating a girl at work and we would regularly have sex at her side of our business complex. Though she was part of the same company, she was part of a separate regional division and not part of corporate, so her office was typically always empty besides her. One time we were really hot and heavy into it inside the restroom, and against our better judgment we decided anal was a good idea. So we did our thing and I blew the biggest, deepest load into her ass imaginable. As I pulled out, there was a fair amount of poop on my dick, and I walk over to the sink to try and wash it off. As I'm rinsing myself into the sink, we hear the door to her office open, and a large group of coworkers walk in. I panic and immediately try to put my dick away, and as I drop from my tiptoes, I slam my nutsack up against the wall of the sink and pull my taint skin so hard I almost buckled in pain. She runs out of the restroom and closes the door behind her, and I'm sitting in the dark on the toilet seat with shit on my dick and balls, hurting contemplating my life choices. I had intense sex with someone after not sleeping the previous night and not having enough water or eating anything the entire day, and fainted right after. I was incredibly stressed and focused on work all night and day before she got to my apartment. We originally had planned to get me some food and water first, but somehow ended up talking in depth about our weird, ambiguous relationship and our feelings, which got really emotional, and that led to sex. Despite my exhaustion, I found a hidden well of energy within myself and went at it really hard. It was honestly great, much better than I expected given my state. But afterward, when she was actually going to order food, I went to the bathroom to wash up and suddenly realized I felt nauseous. No matter how hungry I had been a moment prior, the thought of eating was now unthinkable. I became very hot and started sweating, felt weak and shaky. I tried to leave the bathroom and called out to her for help. I woke up on the bathroom floor 10-15 seconds later by her count. The first apparently collapsed and briefly lost consciousness, and she claimed she tried to catch me but couldn't reach in time. I'm lucky I didn't seriously injure myself on one of the hard edges in there. Just hurt my shoulder a little. When I was a kid, my dad would frequently take me to his job and give me meaningless tasks to help him out. He was a property manager for a secure gov building, federal guards at the doors, etc. Anyways, he had his office in the basement and was left alone down there by everyone else in the building. He would smoke cigarettes down there, blast music, etc. When I was 13, I went with him to work one day and he gave me the job of using an electric sander to take grime off of copper pipes in one of the machine rooms. I was left alone to my task for hours, and about an hour in I realized how incredibly powerful the vibration was on the sander. One thing led to another and I ended up grinding the handle of the sander on my dick. After I finished, I remember even at 13 saying to myself, "You're really weird, dude." I never told anyone, till now. I went to a clothing-optional beach once, expecting to see a lot of topless sunbathing. Instead, I learned the hard way that it's populated by wrinkly old men with big bellies and small dicks. I thought maybe all the ladies are hiding further up the beach where the bushes can cover them from all the stares. Turns out that's where the old men suck each other off. Underage, many years ago, me and my current wife were very little horny people. We used to go have sex under this highway underpass a little off the beaten path because our parents were always home. Well, it was also near a community center type building. One day when we were walking through the woods to get there, someone thought they seen a man abducting a child. My wife has always been very short. Yes, it was me. We are the same age, just have a crazy height difference, and I have had a beard from a young age, haha. Anyways, long story long, I was getting a BJ and a cop came down to the underpass from the highway up above and yelled, "Freeze." Let me tell you, we both froze. She wouldn't move and had her face covered, with my dick still in her mouth. Then the cop just yelled at us saying, "Can't you guys be doing this at home?" Said he could see I wasn't underage and told us about the call. It was the most embarrassing thing to ever happen. We didn't even bring it up again for a few years. Now we are married, and it is a funny memory. We even went back there to mess around a year ago. Let a chick I was dating move in after only 3 months of being together. Found out 2 months later that she was having another guy over while I was working nights. Confronted her about it, and she proceeded to squat in my apartment for nearly 6 months due to laws not allowing me to remove her on my own. Ended up having to take her to court to finally get her out. Decided to masturbate into a urinal because I was bored and horny studying for finals when I was in college. I studied in an empty classroom in the creepiest old building on campus so that I could be completely focused and not be distracted. I hadn't seen anybody in that building for 3 hours, so I didn't feel the need to lock the bathroom door or do my business in a stall like a normal person. So I'm going to town on myself, and suddenly the bathroom door opens and I stop mid-fat foreskin noises stops suddenly. I just stood there holding my erect penis for a second, put it back in and leave without making eye contact. Still have no idea who that person was, but they definitely knew what I was doing and that I'm damn weird. I had it so bad for this Chinese girl at university back in 2004, and she would not give me the time of day. I did everything I possibly could. Then, in a moment of insane desperation and browsing shit during the earlier days of the internet, I found some sort of self-proclaimed wizard living in California who specialized in love spells, and I shit you not, my 20-year-old brain thought it was a good idea to send said wizard $200 USD to cast the spell. Suffice it to say, the spell did not work. To this day, I still can't believe how stupid I was. Male hormones are ridiculous things. Paid $3 for the nudes to Snapchat girls. Never got any, blocked instantly upon paying. And the worst thing is I did that 4 times. God, being horny literally lowers your IQ by like 70%. I almost jerked off while driving down the highway once, but then I thought if they found my mangled corpse in the wreck with my hand around my dick, my family would be really disappointed. So my brain won that battle. Jerked off in principal's office to his daughter's picture. And that's a wrap for today's Reddit stories. If you enjoyed the ride, hit subscribe for more. Comment on your favorite story, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Until then, stay safe.